Although dessert comes at the end of the meal, I often think it's good to plan it before you do anything else, because at least then you know you've got a good finish. Today I'm going to do a tarte aux fruits, or a fruit tart. Very simple, very basic, but all from scratch. Well, you'll learn to make a pâte brisée, or a short pastry crust with butter. We're going to use apricots for a filling, a fruit filling, because it's in season, but you can use any fruit, whether stone fruit, plums, cherries, apples, figs, anything along throughout the year to create the same kind of tart. And we're going to just take it step by step so that you'll see the basics and be confident to do this on your own. There's nothing wrong with doing a few practice sessions before you try to serve this to guests. So let's get started with the tarte aux fruits and the pâte brisée. A pâte brisée is composed of basically just 3 ingredients, which would be flour, butter, and an egg. And I use an egg with this because it makes it is sort of a more forgiving dough, and especially if you're beginning, this is like a perfect way to approach making pastry. You do it with your hands, not in a machine, and it comes together very, very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and make it once and then talk through it as afterwards. So you see I'm using a scale to measure with. It's very easy to use a small digital scale with grams because it's easy to do proportions. In this case, we use 50% butter to 100% of flour. And I'm going to make a small tart, so I only need 250 grams of flour. That's 50, 100, 150, 2, just a little over 2, and 250 grams. Next, I'm going to take the butter, and I'm going to use 125 grams of butter. So that's 50% of the weight of the flour. This is half of a 250 gram cube, and I'll just put it on there. And then I have the perfect amount for a total of 175, I'm sorry, 375. So I just cut up this cube, which has just come out of the refrigerator. I'm just making it into small chunks. I do a lot of things in my hands like this because over the years, that's how I've learned to do it. You can cut it onto the board if you're not comfortable. But basically, you just want to break it up into smaller pieces so that you can then manage it with your hands. Since it's a sweet pastry crust, you can also add a little bit of sugar. I didn't include that when I said this is just 3 ingredients, but a sprinkle of sugar, maybe a tablespoon, will help the pastry brown. So all I do is coat the butter with the flour lightly. Nothing's going to stick to my hands yet. And now I'm going to start to smash these cubes. They're just the right temperature. It's a warm day here in the kitchen, warm summer day. If it's cold in your kitchen in the wintertime, you might let this sit at room temperature when it comes out of the refrigerator. But you can see that I can smash these quite easily with my hands. And it's a technique that I developed over the years, which is to form little flakes, butter flakes. So my pastry isn't like cornmeal or sand, that would be for a pâte sablé, but it's more flaky, broken crust, a pâte brisée. You might want to come in close and take a look at this. So I just push these over with my thumbs over the front of my fingers. And that starts to work the flour into the butter as well. And this can be done in just a few minutes with this amount of dough. If I am doing a larger tart or several tarts, I might do it in 2 batches because it's easier to work with a smaller batch first. Once it gets to this stage where it starts to get crumbly, and you can see if I it'll start to hold together a little bit. Now I know that I'm going to just add the egg and a little bit of water if needed to mix it together. I'll make a well in the middle, crack the egg. Then I just want to beat the egg whites, particularly with the yolk, so that it takes the threads of the egg white and makes them softer. I'm going to need just a little bit of water as well, which I didn't have ready. So just a little bit of water, maybe a tablespoon or so. Sometimes I use the eggshell as a measure because this will give me about the amount of liquid I need just to bind the dough together. One of the things when making a pastry is you'll also find differences in flour. I'm using all-purpose flour. In France, it's called T55, but it's also very fresh and slightly dry. Sometimes my flour in a very damp kitchen will be damp and I need to add less water or more water. Just another little sprinkle. And then I can see how it just starts to all come together. Once I see that this is coming together, I'll just use my hands to form a ball, and then we'll get ready to roll it out. Just want to pick up all the loose bits. I like to have enough flour on my board, and I use my wooden cutting surface to roll out instead of a marble or granite, or oftentimes pastries you're told to work it cold, very cold. I'm doing this all at room temperature. I'm doing it quite quickly though, and the thing about working on the wooden surface for me is that the wood picks up some of the flour and acts like little ball bearings so that things don't stick to it as much. And then I'll just turn this out. Now I should show you before I roll this out that this is the pan, the tart pan I'm going to use. And I'm using this one instead of this one because you can see I wouldn't have enough apricots to fill up this tart pan. So depending on what I'm using from the amount of apricots I have. So this is about a 9-inch tart pan. That's what we're going to go with. A little bit of flour over the top. And because this dough is quite soft, I can afford to work in a little bit of flour as I'm going along. You might come and see how soft this is by just I can just push this in and the dimple is very, very easy to move. Put a little flour on your pin. I like to use these are called French pins. I like it because it's light and I can maneuver it around. It also pops in my suitcase pretty easily for when I travel. And you want to make sure that you can always move the pastry on the board, and then you know it's not sticky. If it doesn't move, then it's sticking, and you want to go in with a pastry scraper and get some flour underneath it that way. I don't flip it over, I just leave it on the one side like this. And I want to form a circle because my tart, in this case, my tart pan is a circle. You can also make a galette, what people will call a galette, with an open face tart without a pan, and just fold over the edges. But something nice about presenting this as a tart in a round shape. So I can see this is plenty loose here, maybe sticking just there a little. And now I'll just measure to make sure that this is big enough for the center and all the way to the sides and the edges. So I know this is just the right size that I want. Now how I'm going to get this from here into there, it's real easy to use your rolling pin. Start away from you. Use a pastry scraper as your other part of your hand, and then just gently, lightly roll toward you. If there's any sticking, you can just loosen it there. Then you don't have to lift it. Put your tart pan in front. Just lift it gently to the edge and unroll this right into the tart shell. Next, make sure that you put the pastry goes right to the bottom of the corners. Just lift the edge up here and put that in the bottom. All the way around. And then you can decide what you're going to do for the edges. Some tart pans are very sharp on the top and you might just roll over that and that would be enough. This has a little lip, and so I'm just going to, and because I particularly like pastry, I'm going to leave this edge on and I'm just going to turn them over inside to the inside. Maybe that's a bit much there. Trim it. And then I'll make a very simple fluting that'll be decorative but also hold all the juices in. Once it's all sort of tucked in like this, I just make sure that I smash the bottom free edge to the corners. And then using my thumb and 2 forefingers, I'm going to make, get a little bit of flour. I'm just going to make a simple fluting where you pinch. So you come up with your thumb underneath and your 2 forefingers, just hold that shape. And then you just go around. This is the basics of almost any pie, whether you do a kind of traditional pie with a top on it and you seal the crust together, you would do the same kind of fluting. So there we have the pâte brisée all ready to be filled. Now, a lot of recipes will tell you to have put this in the refrigerator before, let it get cold, keep it cold. All that's doing is helping work it to make a traditional pastry very flaky. But this is a broken pastry. It's called a short crust. And so I'm going to go immediately make my filling now. I'm going to go back to my bowl, and I'm going to just add any leftover flour into the bowl, because I'm going to just sprinkle the apricots with some of that. Now these are really perfectly in season. I've been eating these, that's why there's not as many. I'm just going to cut them in half, take the pit out. If you're using peaches, you could cut them into thick slices, or if you're using cherries, you pit them whole, the same thing, and then you put them in a bowl. We're going to sprinkle them with some sugar and a little bit of flour so that the juices will be absorbed. You can also use cornstarch. You're never sure how much juice a fruit will give off until you bake it. So you just sort of count that there will be, these are fresh and quite juicy, but also firm. So when I've been eating them, I've remarked that they were like the perfect combination of firm and juicy, sweet and tart. Nobody caught me that one. It's nice when they're just ripe enough you can start to tear them. In the winter, without the summer fruit available, I would use apples and slice them fairly thinly, because these tarts don't take very long to bake, about 25 minutes. So you want to have the slices thin as well. Okay. So just another little bit, about what will be about a tablespoon of flour altogether, and a good heaping spoon of sugar. Enough to give that, so the juices will start to melt. We can just mix this up. This would be also the time you might add some flavoring if you wanted to add a little alcohol, Armagnac or rum. If you wanted to add vanilla, if you were doing something with apples. In this case, with the apricots are quite tart, so I'm not going to add any lemon juice, but it might be something else you might add. But I think we're just going to keep it like this natural, so you can see the beauty of the juice as it runs itself and makes its own syrup. So all you have to do now is just lay these around and fill the entire bottom, one layer. And do another ring in the center. You want to squeeze these in as close to each other as possible. Get one right in the middle. And then, because there's more than enough here, we're going to do another layer, kind of going over the edges. Because these will cook down and they're going to spill into the tart shell. mixture, and then I can go ahead and sprinkle the flour and sugar mixture over this. Okay, that's it. It's ready to go into the oven at 200 degrees Celsius or 410 Fahrenheit. A nice hot oven so that the pastry cooks quickly. And at the end, when we take it out, if we'll take a look, some fruit are drier than others. We might put a little bit of butter, melt butter over the top of this. You might brush it with some jam. We take a look and see what we're going to do then. It's also a good idea when you're baking something that might have a lot of juice to put it on a cookie sheet and then in the oven. That'll save you from cleaning up afterwards. "25 minutes later, it's ready to come out of the oven. Your oven might run hot or cold, cooler, so you want to always check this, and I'll show you what I'm looking for. That is the ta-da moment. So you can see that the edge of the crust is nice and brown. And we don't want it just pale golden. You want this to be sort of toasted like. Also, some of the apricots have started to bubble up the sugars and brown, really kind of marshmallow toasted kind of brown. And now I'm going to take some butter and just with a fork go over the surface all the way along the edge of the pastry as well. This gives a little sheen to it. And this will melt on the surface of the apricot and kind of make it shiny. Alternately, you could use a glaze, but I find this is just a simple version and you don't add any more additional sugar to it. It's not very sweet, this tart. That's all you need to do. So you could bring this to the table and let it sit on the sideboard while you're having your meal, and then it's ready to eat. I would serve this with a spoon of creme fraiche, or maybe even a la mode with some ice cream. But on its own, as it cools down and becomes room temperature, will be really just delicious, and pick it up with your hands and eat it like we do here in France. Thank you for cooking along in my kitchen at Comont. This is your basic tarte aux fruits, fruit tart that you can make all the time, anytime, once you get the hang of it.